Hi guys, welcome to this video. This is the fourth video in the F-14X series I'm doing. Now, this is going to be looking at some of the avionics, and I stress some of because it's not a tutorial. There's an awful lot to go into if I was going to do a tutorial. And it's also not going to involve the combat systems, so to speak, because to do so, I mean, they're an entire video on their own. But predominantly that's only going to relate to those people who want to use TACPAC. If you got, there is a menu where you can select some scenarios, but pardon me, bit of a frog in my throat there. But fundamentally, at the moment, we're not going to be doing a great deal of those. So let me also, by the way, if you feel slightly nauseous, it's because I'm trying to use track IR for one of the first times. I don't generally use it on FSX because I always seem to have problems with it. I don't know what it is, whether it's me or the system or whatever, but there we go. So let's just turn that off, and then I'll use the old original stuff so that I can around the avionics a bit. Okay. So this is the first thing that we need to be aware of down here. This is the TACAN box. By the way, this bit here is part of the TACAN. It gives control to the Rio or the pilot, whichever one wants or needs it. You can give it in tech, so it's not really a problem. And then this is the volume available for it. So if you were listening to the beacons. So next thing is this is the TACAN box. Now the best way to think of TACAN is a combined VOR ILS receiver designed for the military. And you can see it's got a channel designator here, so if you turn on the inside inner bit you get the last digit. If you turn on the outer bit you get the first two digits. This is set up to channel 111 X-ray, which equates to the Daventry VOR 116.4, and if the tooltips are on and you hover over it, it will come up with the normal frequency. And that's really all there is to this. You've got your control of it in terms of off receive, X-ray Yankee channels, and then the actual channel itself. Not a lot else. What we've got here is the intercom system. Doesn't really affect us that much, to be fair, which is why none of it's clickable. This is your radio, just a bog standard VHF radio set. There's nothing exciting. Now it does have presets, so you can have it on guard. Automatically goes to 121.5. Manual is whatever frequency you want to set it as. Presets are certainly in the military we would call them stud, so you'd go to stud 1, stud 2, stud 3, and it can be changed with the preset dial here. And then read would be if you want to read what the individual presets are. So there you go. So that's it really, that's all the radios. Got the ADF as well here that you can listen to, but generally unlikely to be listening to that too much in this sort of aircraft. Now up here we've got our normal controls, but just beneath that we've got, this is the stability augmentation system, StabAug. Just beneath it we've got this little trick here, which is the autopilot. Now it does not work as a sort of airliner style autopilot, so I'll say that first off, and we'll look at that once we're airborne. But basically what happens is you've got your master switch on off, and then if it's on and none of these are selected, it goes into a mode which is similar to control wheel steering. And I'll explain that. And then with each of these on, you get certain criteria and parameters. And then the final one is VEC PCD can follow a flight plan. ACL is the automatic carrier landing. So that's the setup for that. Don't need air start on because we're running. Throttle. Now this is the auto throttle. This is likely to cause confusion. It is not an auto throttle per se. Manual is the normal setting. Boost is the setting which gives you finer control over your throttles. So you see them moving there. That would give you finer control, and basically what it does, it relieves some of the load of the throttles so that you can make really small fine adjustments with it when you're doing your landings. And then finally auto is the auto throttle. Now the auto throttle does not have anything to do with your speed. And it sounds odd, but it doesn't. What it aims to do is to maintain a 15 degree, or a 15 unit angle of attack, I should say. So in effect, what then happens is once you've got a speed, it will select the speed that gives you 15 units angle of attack, basically, and it will maintain it there. And then you fly the aircraft using the stick as you normally would do. So fundamentally, that's what that is. It doesn't control speed control as you would expect in a normal aircraft. It's predominantly there, so you would combine that with the ACL, for the automatic carrier landing. You'd combine those two, that one at auto and that one at that ACL, and that would give you hands-off landing. So that's all your avionics on the left-hand side. As we come up round now, we've got our normal indications. These screens in the HUD are blank at the moment because the next panel we want to look at is down here. So you've got the display modes. This is the power switches for the displays. We've just turned them on. And you can see we've got the HUD. This is the B model, by the way. The HUD is slightly more comprehensive than the A model. There are differences, but this has slightly more to it. And you can see when I said that the Daventry beacon down here was dialed in. Here it is, DTY, Delta Tango Yankee. Delta Tango Yankee, even at 28 miles. So there we go. This is... So that's your HUD there. So VDI is this one here, which is your visual display indicator or vertical display indicator. Basically it's just on off, there's no rocket science with that. And then finally you've got your HSD, which is your HSD or ECM display, just on or off with that. Now these switches here control the actual displays, what they do. So with the HUD, there's quite a bit of detail on that. You can choose to declutter it, and it reduces it. And one of the key things you see here is it goes down to the little boxes with the digits rather than the big dials with the numbers. So it declutters it basically. AWL relates to whether you've got it set to ACL, automatic carrier landing, or ILS in the HUD. So that's a significant one. This is for the VDI, visual display indicator or vertical display indicator. So TV, if you had a TV missile, it'd show the picture, or conversely, if you had the visual identification camera on the aircraft, that would show there. And again, you can use it to show ILS or automatic carrier landing. And when you do so, you get this kind of black line or a green line with course deviation. Now, it's worth remembering that you've got a difference with ILS and ACL. The main difference is that when you fly an ILS, it's all pilot controlled. But when you fly a carrier approach using ACL, what happens is the ship works out where the aircraft is and consequently controls the aircraft. So it's not the aircraft that flies the approach, it's the ship that informs the aircraft where it needs to go. So it's different to an ILS. It's in the documentation. It's hard to explain, but fundamentally that's why it is different switch positions. HSD down here, 3 positions. You've got nav, which comes up with a normal VOR radial, VOR ring with a beacon radial and a course deviation bar. If you go all the way down, you get your ECM, which is TAC pack playable basically, and TID is your target information display, which basically is a replication of what the Rio is doing in terms of air combat, etc. So that's that. So we'll put it back onto nav. Now down here you've got the various modes for the displays, and you can see what's happening is as we change it. I don't want the stick back. As we change it, we get the different indications up, down, and air to ground, and landing, for example. So, and you obviously just choose the mode that's pertinent to what you're trying to do at the moment. So takeoff for us. So that's those 3 screens and the controls that operate those. The only other 2 things to be aware of is a little switch down here. You click it, which gets rid of the stick, which is a complete pain if it's there. So ultimately, in the real aircraft, that's where the stick would be. And then finally, you've got 2 little dials here. One is the course, and the other is the heading. Now, it's worth noting that the heading reference, the heading mode on here, is basically, and people can correct me if I'm wrong, but basically is like a form of control wheel steering. So it's not necessarily going to track round to where the heading bug is. It's not like an airliner. So with all of that in mind, you just have to be mindful that the heading is completely different, and here's your course. So what we'll do is it's at Daventry, so we're on 3-3, it's going to be heading that way. So that's us centralised on the course deviation, and you can see we're going to be heading about 1-2, whatever it is. It's set up at a course of 307, so let's turn that all the way around to go towards Daventry, which is going to be there, 127. So that's off towards the Daventry VOR. And what we'll do is we'll fly out towards the Daventry VOR, then we'll probably do Honolly, and then once we've done Honolly we will come back and probably look at doing an ILS. So if you bear with me, I'm just going to quickly go and have a look at one of my plates, and I'll dig out what the Honolly beacon is, because I haven't got the number to hand. So Birmingham, let's see if we can find out what the Honolly beacon is. And fortunately, Aerosoft do provide you with a nice little list of what all the subsequent frequencies are. So 11365 is 83 Yankee. So that's channel 83 Yankee. TACAN, by the way, is a military system, can pick up VOR, but I don't really understand the difference between the two. Obviously most military aircraft can use both, but I don't think civilian aircraft can generally use both. Okay, so finally, last couple of bits. Down here you've got some of the compass bits. They don't work, but in fairness you don't really need to worry about them. You've got your test switches, which basically do things like lights, fire detection and instruments, so you don't need to worry about that. It does have video control, so you can video your HUD, which is all very nice and good if you want to just video that last kill. And then the only other thing to be aware of is the steer command. Now the steer command relates to your HSI and HUD, and basically what you're doing is you're selecting what you want as your reference that you're going to steer for. So TACAN, destination, which isn't modelled to the best of my knowledge, AWL PCD, vectors, and manual. And the vectors, to the best of my knowledge, is basically flight plan. And you can see here it gives the wind, the true airspeed and the ground speed and all sorts of useful information. And then man is just where you want to set whatever you want to set, for example. And you can see it's got a different needle to the TACAN. So there we go. And then the last couple of things, you've got your duplicate of your UHF radio up here. It's actually VHF, although the box says UHF, because the thing is that you can't replicate UHF frequencies in FSX. And then you've got your VHF, UHF box 2 here, which you can mess around with. But there we go. That's all the avionics, guys. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get airborne, and we're going to have a look around. So let me just get my track IR set up, make sure I can. My track IR is being a little bit picky at the minute. So now you can see up here we've got the little landing thing. That's indicating to me that, consistent with our gear being down, we're all good to go. There's no warning lights, no cautions. Gears down, flaps are not down at the minute. So we'll put them down. We'll do a flap takeoff. This thing can do flapped or flapless takeoffs. Oh, while I remember, I'll just zoom in. You see this little arrow here? This is really useful. This points to the VOR. It's like an RMI, radial magnetic indicator. Basically what it does is it points directly at the VOR. So it helps with situational awareness. If you're not quite sure of your situation in relation to the beacon, so here, because obviously you could be all over the place, the deviation bar has a limit. So let's say you're here, the deviation bar will be offset one side or the other. If you're here, it will be offset to the maximum, but it doesn't tell you if you're here, 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 here. It won't change until you're somewhere sort of within, if you like, the maximum setting of it. So what you can then do, and it's particularly useful with the carriers, is this gives you a steer direct to the point. In addition, what you get is you get a little diamond here. You see it flashing on the edge of the HUD. This tells you the direction to turn to get that, and that basically is pointing. It's like a navigation waypoint, basically. And you'll get the same thing if you do a route using the autopilot, and it can use the bog standard FSX flight planner, or failing that, if you use something like Plan G, what you can do is do an FSX compatible route and download it and stick it in your flight plans folder, and then you can call it up. when you go into the normal flight plan menu. So you can do that, and you can use a flight plan, but that gives you your steer points. This, however, is really useful for carriers because it gives you a direct indication of where the carrier is in relation to you. So what we're going to do is we're going to get airborne, we'll go out towards Daventry, we'll then come back towards Honolly, and then finally we'll look to do an ILS onto 3-3. And then after that, what we'll do is we'll go to sea, we'll get on board the carrier, and we'll look at doing a carrier approach. And instead of the ILS, we'll look at doing a coupled one, where we get the system to do everything we need it to do. Okay, so without further ado, let's get airborne. Just gotta love this plane with its burners on. And there we go. Up we go. Gear up. Flaps coming up automatically, and what we're going to do now is we're going to go round to the right. This is FSX steam, by the way. Very nice. Ooh, got some control issues here. Not quite sure why, but we've obviously upset it somehow. Yeah, stability system's on, autopilot's not on. So the only thing I can imagine is we got a little bit too enthusiastic about our pull. Let me reset my viewpoint so I can at least see where we're going. So here we go, coming around. There's our steer point coming up. And all we're going to do is fly towards that, and we'll set ourselves approximately there. We'll take some of the throttle off. We'll make sure that yeah, that's all working fine. Don't know what's going on there, but never mind. Not quite sure, but it's having some kittens. Okay, so the heading hold. Literally, it's a heading hold. It doesn't steer to a heading. So what you do is you come down here, you turn your heading hold on. In fact, what we'll do is the control wheel steering first. Control wheel steering is basically the most basic autopilot mode. So you put your autopilot on, and then what it does is it does control wheel steering. So if I raise the nose, it just holds it where I set it. If I bank, it just holds it where it sets it. If I bank the other way, hold it where it sets it, and so on and so forth. So if you wanted something where you're climbing, for example, this thing doesn't have a climb mode. So what you would do is you would set your power, you set your heading, you'd pull up, you'd set your autopilot onto just to on with no other modes, which is your control wheel steering, and it will just climb quite happily, assuming you maintain enough power for the speed. Now you can see here it's showing the same information on both these screens. So this is our normal horizontal situational indicator, HSI, with the course here and the range to Daventry, and this is the vertical display one, and it's also flashing a little chevron here which tells us that we would need to turn right to deviate back onto track, and our little arrow is here pointing somewhere over here to where the beacon is, and yep, got to be a good one that. So we're about 6,000 feet, so what we'll do, they do have breakaway forces, these, by the way, and it depends on the mode you're in as to what happens with the breakaway force. So what we'll do is we'll turn in towards Daventry, take our order. Still need to get used to this this track IR for looking around and stuff. It's novel, I have to admit. I've flown with it occasionally, but not that often. Now we appear to be on course somehow by some mere mysterious fluke to get towards Daventry, so there's no skill on my part, that's just potluck, I assure you. So let's get ourselves trimmed out a little bit better so that we can give the autopilot a chance. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to go down, we're going to select heading and altitude, and then click it on. And what you should see is this this center section here, the velocity vector doesn't move, and this is because these two, so we're in control wheel steer mode, CCS it actually is, it's a technical term, but we're in CCS because the autopilot's on, but we've selected two modes and nothing's happening. The reason nothing's happening is because you need to actually, that's armed the mode, you then need to turn the mode on, which is where you click the switch, whatever it is you've got set for nose wheel steering. And you'll see now that what's happening is it's bringing the nose up, it's got the wings level, and it's going to maintain the heading we're at. Now you'll notice if you look down here, my heading indicator, my heading bug, so if I want to mess around with the heading, which is this one here, look, you see I move that all over the place. It's got nothing to do with this. Basically what this heading hold is it's exactly what it says on the tin. Whatever heading you've got, it holds. So we're heading up towards Daventry, we've got about 7 miles to go. So that's really the autopilot, that's how it works. That's how the HUD works, that's how the vertical element of it works. A little bit of turbulence there. Now again, that's the thing, is it's got limited authority, so if it gets some turbulence it's not particularly happy chappy, but there we go. So what we'll do now is we'll disengage all of that. So disengage all of that. I absolutely hate trying to click things in the cockpit with this. I ought to allocate a button on my joystick so I can just pause it. At the moment it's on the keyboard. So there we go. So that's us towards Daventry. What we're going to do now is we're going to select a new channel. So because I'm going to mess around with the radios and I'm going to be heads in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it all about there. I'm going to click that one, that one, that one, and then press my nose wheel steering, and then that will settle it down. You'll see this come down. It's quite gradual, it's not a very demanding thing, but it comes down and it will settle and hold our altitude, and our altitude at the moment is, let me just what are we at, 6,400, so let's just reset that. Okay, so now that we've got that, we're going to go towards Honolly 11365, which is 83 Yankee. Come on, you silly thing. I'm really not getting... There we go. Now if we've got it right, it should be dialed in here. It should also show London. London? I don't think so. It's 11365, 83 Yankee. Let's see what it says if I do that. London. Oh, it's not happy with that. Oh well, I've probably just dialed it up incorrectly. Let me just have a look at my notes. 11365, 83 Yankee. Oh well, never mind, eh? What we'll do in that case... Oh, every time I move around, this track IR decides it's going to have a fit. Not happy with it, but there we go. Well, we're certainly not going to go to London, so what we'll do is we'll just call up map. So let's set ourselves onto 260. You can use the master switch to take all the autopilot off, but I'm being lazy. So around we go. As I say, it's this bizarre setup of click and arm. So you've got to click it to arm it, and click it to arm it, and then once you've armed it, you need to actually engage it, put it on. So what's our heading? About 260. We said well, let's go 255. Got a fair old rate of knots on there, so having got there, click. It's my track IR that's causing all these hiccups, and then click the engage button, which is the nose wheel steering. There's no way I'm going to London, my friends. 61.5 miles. I don't think so. Yeah, this is not quite sure what's going on with track IR. Obviously haven't got it set up well enough. Don't know what that is, but as a default FSX runway, it's not particularly beautiful, is it? There we go. Never mind. I need to. I haven't really had a look on the forums that much to see what's happening with the FTX Orbix England scenery. What we can do in the meantime, I'm going to get this set up for the ILS. The ILS 110.1 is going to be 38 X-ray, so 38 X-ray, which it is. Now, interesting thing with the ILS, we've got to configure it, so you'll need to make sure that switch is up. that switches up. I'm going to put that into landing mode so that it knows we're landing, and then we put ACL P3D on, which is going to bring up our ILS bars here and here. Now it's showing that we are well left of our intended course. What we need to do as well is we need to set our course, which is, in fact no, we don't need to set this because it's an ILS. What am I on about? Yeah, having a senior moment. But anyway, here we are routing over. So we've got ourselves set up, we're ready for landing. We've got the AWL PCD set here, which is our landing mode, if you like, for our heads-up display and our VDI. So you can see where we're at. The other thing to be aware of is that our little arrow has gone now. So I've got a strong belief that... Is that Birmingham over there? Let me have a quick look at the... It is. So what we're going to do in that case... Not going to do an auto land, but we're obviously very high, so let's get ourselves down. Again, this is a military jet, so in terms of using civilian nav aids, it's not the greatest thing. Because one of the things it's worth bearing in mind here is that when you look down here, it's ILS or VOR basically. So what that means is that about 2,000 feet will do us. Oh, and we're coming right onto the centre line as well. So we need to get around to about 330. Now this is not a flight director. This is the old crossbars and the usual sense of an ILS, i.e. it will give you your position relative to the glide slope, but it will not give you flight director indications. So next things next, we've got a trim. Glide slopes coming in. This is where I show my rather ham-fisted flying attempts. I'm going to put the gear down. Going to need to trim for that. And the course deviation bars just start to come in now. And actually what we need to do is get ourselves round to a heading of about 330 for this. 329 I think is the actual runway heading. Bit of power coming on now. 2 stages of flaps. Okay, now we're centering. We need to get it back to about 330, there or thereabouts. Now because we're starting to go slow, we do get this oscillation in yaw, which I've discussed previously in videos. It can be a little bit disconcerting, but fundamentally it's one of the joys of this aircraft, is how disconcerting that is. It makes it a challenge to fly, and makes it certainly a challenge to fly well. So we're a little bit fast on our approach speed, but it's not too much of a problem. We're probably about 10 to 15 knots too fast, but we've got a nice long runway. It's doing its little trick of oscillating in yaw again. Slightly left of centre line, so correcting. Slightly low, correcting nicely to the right again. So at this point we'll call visual. We've got 2 reds, 2 whites. We've got full flaps down, just double check that. The wind's obviously from the right, it's dragging us over to the left. We'll see if we can actually get this thing down on centre line. Again, being a carrier aircraft, it doesn't necessarily need to flare the same as most aircraft. And they're not the prettiest of landings. But there we go. So that's the basics of navigating with intro to the avionics. Getting a bit of stutter through FSX Steam there. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to do a quick run through of the same sort of avionics but on a carrier, where we'll look at the landing system and see how we're going with that. So I shall speak to you guys in a moment. So welcome back to the F-14B. What I've done for this one, this is a brief bit which I hadn't planned on doing, but I've decided to do it anyway because I think it'll be beneficial. But basically what I've done is I've gone into the default FSX flight planner, and I've just chucked a very quick flight plan in. Now we're at Culdrose, down in the bottom end of Cornwall, down near the Lizard Peninsula, and I've put a very quick flight plan which takes in about 3 or 4 waypoints and goes to Yeovilton. So what we're going to do here is I've loaded the flight plan. There's nothing in here to tell me that the flight plan is loaded directly in the state that we get in the aircraft. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a couple of bits. Now, because it's a flight plan, it is in effect a GPS flight plan. So it doesn't use the beacons per se. So that's the first thing to be aware of. The second thing to be aware of is that obviously we've got our display mode here, which is, if you like, the top half. And then we've got our steer command, which is the bottom half down here. So this bit here, and that really is what's going to guide us. So the first thing we need to do is we need to put that into nav mode. Now it comes up with a compass rose, but the compass rose at the moment doesn't give us any useful indications. So what we'll do is we'll put it into cruise, ready, but that doesn't give us any useful indications, and then we'll go to vector, as in vector. And it shows the arrow for the next waypoint. It's got the wind at the top, the true airspeed we're currently travelling at, the ground speed, and then it tells you what the next waypoint is, which for us is going to go on top the airfield Echo Golf Hotel Yankee. What you also now see is we've got a course deviation bar, which has come up here in the HUD, and you've got your little arrow here, which tells you which way you're going in terms of your next waypoint. So without further ado, let's get airborne. See how we get on. There we go, 150 knots. Let's get ourselves up. Gear up. Accelerating quickly, so flaps up as well. Okay, and let's turn towards our waypoint. Now you can see here what it's showing is we've got a fly right indication on the bar here. It's not particularly clear, but you've also got your turn right indication here, which helps. And also you've got your sort of arrow here, which is a direct point. And if we look, I haven't got any wind set up on this for a change, but you see the true airspeed is rocketing up and the ground speed is nearly 600 knots. So let's just do a steady pull. I'm not going to increase the alpha too much, and we'll head round towards the northeast, sorry. And here we come. As we come round, get to the point where, okay, so the arrow's pointing towards the waypoint. However, this is a course deviation bar, so it's telling us how far left or right of track we are. So here's the waypoint over here, but because we took off and did 600 knots, we're not currently on track. So what we'll do is we'll just route ourselves back towards track and see how we get on. Then once we're on track, what I'll do is I'll put the auto, here we go. Let's get ourselves round. Okay, so there's our steer point. So let's get ourselves nice and steady at a steady airspeed for the navigation. We're slightly left of track, we're not quite wings level. So the next thing down here is we put that on, not ACL but VEC. We can, I'll leave that off, put that on, and then press our engage button. And what it should now do, all things being well, is it should follow the nav route. Seems to be a little bit excitable with bank, but there we go, and that's our nav route. You can see it's got us an intercept heading, you can see it's just changed waypoint, so it's turning around to the right, and that's how you can follow a basic FSX flight plan. I mean, if you wanted to do something like Plan G, or use a program which can export a flight plan in a standard FSX format, then this will follow it. So in theory, technically you could do GPS style navigation for quite some distance with this, and it would all be good. So there you go, guys. You can see it's following the nav nicely. So other things to be aware of. Down here it tells you the waypoints, so waypoint 1, which is the one we're off to now. 34.1, 34.0, time to go 5 minutes. So all things considered, that's your nav. You can see the point over here. All it's doing at the moment is recovering us back onto the centre line of our track. Because it doesn't go direct to the beacons, what it tries to do is recover the track, so it seems to do that fairly well. Waypoint, where we are, off we go, job's a good one. Nothing more to say about that really. Obviously if you wanted to change what you're doing, inlet valves, why are the inlet valve lights showing? Let's recycle those. No idea where they're showing, but there we go. So there we are. Off to sunny Cornwall we are. And here we are now, sat on the deck of the USS Kitty Hawk. Now this section is going to cover looking at the ACLS, the Automatic Carrier Landing System, and it's not the easiest system in the world to use. In fact, it's downright tricky, but here we go. Avionics wise, TACAN automatically sets itself up with the frequencies for the USS Kitty Hawk. It does in the instructions have the frequencies and the channels you need to set for other carriers. Say the default one in acceleration, or Javier Fernandez, is Nimitz, I think it is. We're going to be using the autopilot. You need to make sure all your AFCS stab is on before you go anywhere. We don't need that on at the moment. We do need that on. Everything's ready to go. We'll have a quick stir of the flight controls, make sure they're all working, which they are. Check all the speed brakes in, flaps are set, everything's good to go. Okay, so we've got it set up now. If we look at it, it's got needles showing already. This is our TACAN, and our TACAN needle here. It's showing that we're heading away from the TACAN and that we're left of our intended track. So here we are. This is where the TACAN is. We would fly to get that needle into the middle. So we would turn right here, but we would be heading away. Now what we're going to do is, because we're doing a carrier landing, the carrier deck is offset by 10 or 12 degrees. I can't remember the exact number, but 10 or 12 degrees to the actual landing section of the deck. So if you imagine the runway section is 10-12 degrees offset to the left. So actually our intercept heading, or our heading that we're going to come down, is going to be about 161, 160, 161, something like that. So this won't line up perfectly with it. We've got ourselves set up with nav on here. The course is obviously predetermined for the TACAN, don't know why. Takeoff mode, we've got steer command, which is set to all-weather landing, AWL or PCD, which is precision carrier descent, I think it is. So that's all good to go. The HUDs and everything are on. That's set to nav. These need to be set to ACL, which is automatic carrier landing. And then what happens is, as we get round towards our intercept, we'll see that instrumentation as we should. So we're ready to go. The whole back bar's in place. Let's throttle up. We are going to use afterburner because I'm being lazy. And away we go. Nice good pull on the stick, and up we go. Gear up. And at this speed, we're not going to take long to get the flaps up. So there we go. Flaps are up, gears up, and away we go. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to come around to a heading of about, well, the reciprocal's 350, so we'll come around onto about the reciprocal's 350, so we'll do 340, and in effect what we'll do is we'll do a downwind of the landing direction, really. There's one of the escort ships, carrier down there somewhere. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Don't want to be going too fast, so I said 340. Let's try and make it 340. You never know, we might actually get it right. Okay, so downwind, we're going to go out to about 10 miles, but we can start to configure a few things before we get there. First thing we're going to want to do is put PCD onto ACL. Now it brings up this rather natty gauge over here on the right. If you've got shift 7, so if I do shift 7 I'll get it back. First thing it does is it tells you your relative position to this track here. This track is the one that is what we're going to fly down. It's quite narrow, it's about only 1 or 2 degrees. Laterally and vertically. It's very narrow compared to, say, an ILS. It's much more demanding, and it's got the range look 0510. Okay, so you would normally try and intercept somewhere between 5 and 10 miles. Because we're, or certainly I'm a bit of a noob with this, I've not really used this system much before, we're actually going to continue out a little bit beyond 10 just so we can get ourselves stable and set up. Okay, relevant lights here. We've got landing check, which means we are within range of the carrier, which means we should be able to do the approach. And AP ref, all that means is that we've got this switch here, the ACL, automatic carrier landing switch, selected, but at the moment we've got no other indications than that. Okay guys, just so you know where we're at, I've had to do a go around with the last attempt, so I'll explain a little bit about what's going on. Instead of the ACL for the HUD, I've got, instead of all automated carrier landing, what I've got selected is ILS to give me some needles. That will help me out a little bit. 3,000 feet, we're below the glide slope. The TACAN is showing us at 14.5 miles, so we're going to turn back in towards it now. We've got AP ref, which basically means that the ACLS and VEC switch down here is switched to ACLS, and everything else is off at the moment. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn in, and we need to be down to about 300 knots by the time we come around the corner. Now, because we're quite close to the track, you can see the lines here, we're coming across here, we get the nice little indicator box, but that's not something we need to concern ourselves with overly at the minute. So we're going to do level turn about 3,500 feet, give or take a little bit for good luck. 20 degrees off should do, just so that we can intercept it nicely. Now at 3,000 feet we should start to see it at about 10 miles. Should start to see the pitch line come down at about 10 miles. Okay, let's hook down. No, we haven't got hook down. Hook down. There we go. This little line here, by the way, the thick line tells us the heading for the ILS basically. You can see the pitch ladder starting to come down a bit. We're not close enough yet to get the landing check light come on yet. So we're just watching the airspeed, watching the altitude. It's hunting a little bit in terms of trim vertically. It's only to be expected. Need to come left probably about 2 degrees, just so that we don't drift. Right, landing check is now on, and the pitch bars should be coming in shortly. Drifting right again. I'm going to put the speed brake out and the gear out. That'll change the pitch. You need the speed to come down quite markedly. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring it down towards the auto throttle settings. The heading to balance. And we're aiming to get that little green dot that you can see into the dark area. It says ACL is ready. That means we're within tolerances. So let's go down here. We click 1, 2, put the autopilot on, and then we wait to see if it can capture it. Click nose wheel steering, autopilot coupler. Let's see if it's got it. And command control, there we go. Oh, excuse me, moving around on my seat. Let's see if it's actually got it and if it's accepting it. So here we go. It's just gone out of tolerance here by the looks of things. Let's see if it gets it back in. Still got command control on. So airspeed's still good. Got the donuts, we know the auto throttle is working. AWL is still on. Coming back in, you can see the green dot over here on the right, so it's coming back in nicely. It has got the command control. So all we're going to do now is we're going to follow this down. We're going to keep our hands completely off the controls. I'm just being very careful with the rudders. Keep our hands completely off the controls and let it do its own thing. You can see it's bringing the green dot back into the middle. And so basically the process is that you set up your avionics correctly to start with. So you set your HUD and VDI, vertical display indicator, and your steer command. So you set them either to, the first two you can set to AWL or ILS, but generally you'd show the AWL for the needles. Steer command goes to AWL stroke PCL, and as long as you're in range of the carrier you get the landing check light. Okay. Then what you do is you set yourself up into position. So you do your ACLS first, that switch there, which brings up the system here and this system here, and basically your autopilot ref light, which is down here, says you're ready to go. You get your airspeed 250 to 300 knots, you hook down, and then you've got to set yourself up to catch this basically. Once you have flown yourself into alignment, you'll get the ACL ready light, which basically says you're in the right place at the right time, wearing the right shoes. Once you then have that light, you put your speed brakes down, your gear down, and your flaps down so that you're between 180 and 200 knots, and you continue reducing speed until you get 12 units angle of attack, at which point you put your auto throttle on. That bad boy, where's it gone? There. Once you've got your auto throttle on, how are we doing? Let's just set ourselves up a bit better. Once you've got your auto throttle on, there we go, that's a better view. You also need to put your autopilot on, as long as you're still within the criteria of this dark box here. And then, as long as you're still within that criteria, you click your nose wheel steer button, Shift G, or a joystick bound button, to then set your carrier landing active, if that makes sense.
Tomcat ball 13.0.